Yeah, I do think there is some truth to the Eagles really being wanting to play this behind the scenes. I don't think that's the only reason we haven't heard about more buzz about, in terms of the Panthers and the Browns and the Falcons and the Saints meeting with Deshaun Watson. Obviously, there's been reporting out there that Deshaun Watson doesn't want to play in Philly, which is extremely relevant when he has a no trade clause. So, but my read on it, just my thought on it, is that you look at how the Browns have kind of gone with Baker Mayfield and him feeling alienated with the Cleveland's interest in Deshaun Watson, and I don't think the Eagles want to be in that boat. I think they're playing things much closer to the vest.
You got your MAGA guys here on Birds 365, McMullen and McDonald. We are joined by another good Irishman. Or so I hope. It's St. Patty's Day. We're making everybody honorary Irish, including Brandon Lee Gowton. How much Irish you got in you, BLG?
Really good question, Jody. So I'm like half Polish. That's the main half for me. And then the other half is like English, Irish mix. I don't know exactly.
You'll throw it in. Irish is close enough. There we go.
If you got any percentage, you're all Irish today.
Yeah, all Irish. If you got 1%, you're all Irish today. You got a green shirt on, BLG.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can't do that. We got green screens, so we can't even celebrate St. Patrick's Day. But enough of that nonsense. Let's get to the real news. Where do you want to start? Deshaun Watson or Howie Roseman? And both, because let's face it, they mix in together. Howie gets the 3-year contract extension. Jimmy Kempski, hat tip to him, who does a great podcast with you, getting the scoop. And the alignment is complete. Both Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman are under contract through 2025. It's interesting, BLG, because I think Howie's a good general manager. I get killed for this all the time. But it is weird to be able to hire 3 coaches in this league. So I get both sides of the fence. And then I'll bring in the Deshaun Watson part and say, there are some people who believe the Eagles are still in on this. I'm not one of them. I don't know where you are. But if they are in on this is one of the great GM jobs of all time. The subterfuge on this is brilliant. So where's the disconnect of people that Howie's not good, but Howie's still in the mix for Deshaun Watson?
Well, I think when you evaluate Howie Roseman, I think it's a nuanced kind of thing. I think there's reasonable it's reasonable for people to have mixed feelings on him. I think you can point out, obviously, the Super Bowl. You can say playoffs in the last 4 out of the 5 years. You can look at the maneuvering that he's done. And I've always maintained that Howie's been really good, one of the best DMs when it comes to understanding value and navigating trades. You look at the Carson Wentz deal, just as an example. But I mean, when we're sitting here, we're also talking about a GM with 4 playoff wins in 11 years. And you're also looking at what the Eagles have done more recently. We all like to talk about how the NFL is that kind of league. And the Eagles rank 18th in point differential and 19th in winning percentage since winning the Super Bowl. They are 19 and 29 in games outside of the worst division in the league, or at least one of them, the NFC East, since winning the Super Bowl. So I think there's some reason to question, just how good Howie Roseman has been. I don't think he's been a disaster necessarily. I also don't think he's been amazing. And I also think that the good work he's done last year was in part had to be done because he tore down the team that was a Super Bowl contender and not so intentionally. So I think it's kind of a nuanced thing there. And on the Deshaun Watson part, John, I do think there is some truth to the Eagles really being wanting to play this behind the scenes. I don't think that's the only reason we haven't heard about more buzz about, in terms of the Panthers and the Browns and the Falcons and the Saints meeting with Deshaun Watson. Obviously, there's been reporting out there that Deshaun Watson doesn't want to play in Philly, which is extremely relevant when he has a no trade clause. So, but my read on it, just my thought on it, is that you look at how the Browns have kind of gone with Baker Mayfield and him feeling alienated with the Cleveland's interest in Deshaun Watson. And I don't think the Eagles want to be in that boat. I think they're playing things much closer to the vest.
Fair enough. So you're saying, although John has said this, I've said this, we'll see if you're willing to say it. That's one of the major pluses of Jalen Hurts. We know what happened here in Philadelphia with Carson Wentz. Doug Peterson eventually said, listen, you're playing like the worst quarterback in the league. I'm going to give this kid a shot here. And Carson Wentz lost his mind. And I don't know that he's recaptured it since. We all believe that if Jalen Hurts has competition or that something is out there in the media or people are speculating on, that he'll handle it because he's a grounded, driven guy who's not going to let some other people's moves that he can't control get inside his head. Are you saying that the Eagles are keeping this under wraps just because they don't want to go down the Carson Wentz road again? They got to realize that Jalen Hurts isn't Carson Wentz in his ability to handle something happening around him, don't they?
Yeah, I think it's more than that. I mean, I think it's not necessarily that they think he can't handle it, but still, you don't want to have it maybe be as brazen, again, as the Browns are. And also just because it potentially hurts your leverage with Jalen Hurts if you want to deal him in the future, making him not look so entrenched as he is. So I think there's multiple reasons why they would do that. Also, again, I do think it's the case that, the Eagles aren't as strong of a contender as those other teams. There's obviously that part of it too. So multiple reasons, I would say.
Well, so can we extend that to free agency then, Brandon, and the fact that some people are looking and seeing safeties come off the board, wide receivers come off the board, and say, "All right, what's going on here?" Are the Eagles soft pedaling this, slow pedaling this because of Deshaun Watson? In other words, not making those other splashes outside of Haason Reddick by going for big name free agents. It's very early in the process, but you know how fans are. They want everybody immediately. And you do have to start getting into the second and third layers. And by the way, that's where some of the value is in free agency. But nonetheless, there's some big names out there, and the Eagles could have been were involved from what I heard with Christian Kirk and to an extent Marcus Williams, but didn't get it done. Is that partially because they have one eye on Deshaun Watson, and that would be a significant addition to the salary cap?
I do think it's a little curious, that they haven't been more active than they've been. You look at the Eagles' history, except for last year, really, when they couldn't do much with the cap situation that they had. They're a little bit more active than this. That being said, I kind of did think they only had really one big splash in them, and I think that was Haason Reddick, and then everything else was kind of going to be waiting out the market. I think that's the process they're in right now when you just look at the receiver situation with obviously Christian Kirk's insane $18 million a year deal.
And by the way, that's a good move. You don't give Christian Kirk that money.
And even I think you look at a guy like DJ Shark who got like 10 million up max value of 12 in Detroit.
Like, up to 12. Yeah.
That's a lot for a guy who only played in 4 games last year. I think the receiver market as a whole is just kind of out of control. And I think when you look at how the Eagles play offense, at least how they did last year, they were the lowest passing volume offense in the league.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you're looking to spend those kind of major resources when you have a limited amount on that position, when you figure they're probably going to be running the ball a lot again next year.
But it all interconnects, Brandon, because if you get a different quarterback, that volume's going to change. Yeah,
that part is true.
And how difficult, not just for the Eagles, but the 4 teams that we know are really involved, and that's the Saints, as you mentioned, the Falcons, the Panthers, the Browns. How difficult it is for these teams to sort of wait, because everything changes if you get Deshaun Watson.
Well, that's the rub, right? It's like that's the risk is worth it in that sense, because you either have a quarterback or you don't, and a team like Carolina or really New Orleans, who kind of just don't really have much to really be excited about that. I mean, it's just worth it because, okay, so what if you strike out? Then you're kind of in the same spot anyway. It's not like, oh, we missed out on this great free agent wide receiver or whatever because we're trying to get Deshaun Watson. Like, okay, that guy's not going to probably move the needle too much anyway. So It's all about the quarterback. That's at least where always my head has been. The Eagles, I think, much more relevant. Who cares what I think? That's where their head has always been. And that's why I still think we're seeing rumors of them connected to him because they really value that position. And as you were saying before I hopped on here, Jody, you're talking about, those 3 first-round picks and John saying like the path hasn't been there for them. That doesn't mean they're going to stop trying until Deshaun Watson's officially on a new team.
All right, since we're discounting and or cutting Eagles some slack that they haven't gotten any upgrades at the wide receiver position yet because they're not a volume throwing team. Okay, that certainly was true last year, and if we're speculating it's going to be true again next year, who's going to run the ball for the Eagles? They decided not to tender Boston Scott, which I kind of thought was a mistake. We'll see how it plays out. If they get him back at a slightly reduced from the 2.4 tender, good for them. But Jordan Howard not under contract either. They have all of 2 running backs under contract as of right now. Who's going to be running the football for this run-dominant and heavy team in 2022?
I do think it's possible that Boston Scott comes back. If you look at like $2.4 million doesn't seem like a lot relative maybe to some other contracts, but that's like top 30 running back money. And I don't know that you're giving top 30 running back money to a backup in Boston Scott. So I can't really fault them for that. I know Boston Scott is a nice player, but I think
right. But here, let me just
Sure.
hop in here. Christian Kirk, who we've been talking about extensively here, was like what, the 127th paid wide receiver this past year. Oh, shoot, now he's in the top 3. How did that happen? Guys move up all the time. When you become available and you hit free agency, your number tends to go up. So if 2.4 million is Boston Scott's number, he's one of those who can upgrade his number. Once you hit free agency, almost everybody, unless you're dropping off the table, everybody's number goes up. I don't think that's an accurate portrayal of what Boston Scott should be. As no one's saying he's a top 30 back, but when you're free and you have the availability, and Eagles made him more free by letting him go complete free agent, I don't think it's outrageous to say you can get that kind of money on the open market.
Well, I wouldn't be looking to the Christian Kirk contract to justify anything, to be clear. But
you understand the point I was trying to make. When you become a free agent,
it's all about contracts are about timing and circumstance. Right. But BLG's right. Look, if Boston Scott can get more than 2.43 million, God bless him. Godspeed. Okay. My indication is I think I forget the number. You might know, Brandon. There weren't a lot of restricted free agents tendered this year because the tenders were pretty high, pretty significant. I think it was 30 something. It was really a low number that got tendered overall. Obviously, the Eagles did it with Nate Herbig, didn't do it with Alex Singleton, Boston, and Greg Ward. They were able to bring Greg back at presumably less money. If Boston gets more than 2.43 million, he's not coming back. I mean, the Eagles clearly, by not tendering, it's not that they don't want the player. They just, they want to value him. You talked about Howie Roseman in valuation. That's where you roll the dice and say, well, nobody's going to pay him like a starting running back, and we can probably get him back at less money. Is that the strategy you think is going on with Boston Scott?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, again, that's where something I think Howie Roseman is really good at, not only in trades, but like on the free agent market, having like a sense, having the relationships he does. I think he has a pulse of who might be interested or not in a player. And I think he's gauging the market in Boston Scott and saying, okay, this guy isn't going to have an insane market. And maybe, like you said, John, like one team comes in and
the Giants, maybe they go, hey, we'll give him 2.5 million. Stop scoring touchdowns against us.
Yeah, exactly. And if they do that, then you kind of just have to be like, okay, well, all right, good luck, Boston. That's a good payday for you. That's not really something that made a ton of sense for us at that point. But look, getting back to Jody's original question, he's still Miles Sanders. Kenneth Gainwell needs to take a bigger step in year 2 in terms of his development, and also the Eagles giving him more opportunities. I think they need to trust him a little more. And if Boston Scott isn't back, there would obviously be some more opportunity for him in that regard. So, I still think they have enough there. They'll probably draft a running back on day 3 at the latest, or sign someone undrafted free agency. Maybe there's a bargain guy that ends up being out there on the free agent market for a while. The Eagles have kind of done that in the past, whether it was bring back Jordan Howard last year or some other players who maybe didn't work out. But like they added Kerryon Johnson at one point last offseason. They added Matt Jones in the past. Again, guys who didn't stick on the team.
Yeah.
But those kind of players will be out there.
Nice pull, Matt Jones, the Eagle Claw. Yeah. And then he fumbled all the time. Safety. Let's go to safety, PLG. Rodney's a free agent. Anthony Harris is free agent. They like Marcus Epps. They don't seem very high on Kayvon Wallace any longer. So, the thought is they're going to bring in a safety. Maybe they bring one of the guys back. I would think Rodney more than Anthony Harris at this point. But when you look at the names coming off the board, and, Marcus Williams probably a little bit too expensive, but when you start looking at the Jordan Whitehead, Scott, I thought that was a great deal for Joe Douglas and the Jets, Jody's Jets. So I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong with Jordan Whitehead. I don't have all the background, but it seemed like a player the Eagles might target. Justin Reed, a lot of people, including myself, were looking in that direction. Marcus May went. He and Denard Wilson have a history. Not much left except one guy who doesn't seem like a typical Eagles signing because of his age and a lot of tread off the tire and Tyrann Mathieu. But Jonathan Gannon talked about Harrison Smith a lot, that movable piece. Can he get that movable? That's like what Tyrann does. Any chance, any outside chance, we talk about subterfuge and no real obvious intentions of meeting with Deshaun Watson. Any chance behind the scenes the Eagles are going, let's go make a splash with that type of player?
Yeah, I think there's a chance. I think it would have to come down to the Honey Badgers seeing, what's out there and kind of realizing that there isn't this strong market for him. There isn't a team out there that is an obvious, no doubt about it kind of contender that has interest in him. So I think it would take something like that. I think it would take time, and I think it would be a little bit later than sooner if that's what would happen. But yeah, they're in a tough spot at safety in terms of their options here, and it's not ideal because going into the free agent market, it looked like they were going to have a lot of options, and a lot of those options have come off the board, at least the enticing ones, certainly ones that would be a solution beyond the 2022 season, which I think is ideally the goal, not just getting another rental in here like the Eagles kind of did last year. I think you can re-sign Rodney McLeod. I think he'll be available for a reasonable rate, and he has expressed interest in coming back to Philly. So you have him, you have Marcus Epps. I think you need one more guy. I think you can go a 3 safety rotation there, which the Eagles were kind of doing later on in the season when I think Rodney was playing well too, not having him play the whole 400 snaps in a game, but kind of on a rotational basis. So maybe that's someone like Patrick Peterson, who obviously has played his career at cornerback, but there was speculation that he might move to safety for the Vikings last year. Didn't end up happening, but Patrick Peterson was on an NFL Network on Wednesday night and kind of mentioned the Eagles as a potential fit for him. So maybe you do something a little bit out of the box like that and move a cornerback to safety, but there aren't any slam dunk answers here.
I am still a fan of Patrick Peterson and Minnesota defense, which lost pieces last year, some of which were to the Eagles and didn't exactly quite fill the void here. Thanks, Mr. Wilson. But I'm still a Peterson guy, and I would prefer him as a cornerback than a safety. Will the Eagles look at Peterson and just say, hey, let's bring him in and let's play him in both positions, and whichever one he's better at, that's where we'll put him for the majority of the year? Is that a possibility for the Eagles?
All comes down to the price. I would think, so Patrick Peterson last year signed a 1-year, $8 million contract with the Vikings. I have a tough time seeing the Eagles spend big resources on the corner position, even though I know they have a hole there right now because Steve Nelson is a free agent. But I just don't think corner is a spot they're looking to, again, spend those kind of big resources at when they already have a lot of money tied up in Darius Slay. And you just look at the fact that I think the Eagles have been kind of able to get more out of less. or not just the Eagles, but Jonathan Gannon, really, with his track record, especially playing the defense that they do and how soft they play. So I don't think they're looking to spend big, but if Patrick Peterson kind of comes at a bargain and you're plugging a hole for 1 year, I think it's in play. I don't think it's necessarily the most likely thing to happen, but I think it's an option that's out there.
All right, BLG, shame on me because we're almost 90 minutes into this program, and I haven't mentioned the significant hit the Eagles took on defense, tongue firmly planted in cheek. Haason Ridgeway. They got one Haason. They lost another, spelled differently, by the way. That's going to be difficult. How many times have you misspelled Haason and Reddick so far? First off.
Yeah, so in the first article that I did when they signed him, I had the 1D because I had JJ Reddick in the brain, so it already got
JJ.
up.
See, most people mess up Haason. You messed up the Reddick part of it. Well, Haason Ridgeway, though. I'm surprised he signed so quickly. He got a deal with San Francisco. Good team. Any concern about replacing Haason Ridgeway as the fourth man in that defensive tackle rotation?
Not at all. I think Haason Ridgeway
had to get it in.
Yeah, I know. Everyone's thinking about it. They might not want to admit it, but deep down, it's in the back of their minds. I don't think so. This is a guy who's been hurt a lot. I mean, obviously, he stayed healthy last year, but prior to last season, I mean, he was constantly getting banged up. And I think at best, he's maxing out as like just a guy. I would say he was fine, not the worst option, but certainly, I think the Eagles could look to get younger at that spot. And obviously, there's going to be some intriguing defensive linemen in the draft. And we'll see what happens with Fletcher Cox. They're going to need to add, whether Cox is back or not, they're going to need to add some more interior defensive line depth here. So it'll be interesting to see who they add.
On Bleeding Green Nation, you guys have a network of individuals doing stuff with other teams, and they show up on your site, you show up on their site. How's your Cowboy buddy doing? I would say the Cowboys have had one of the tougher off seasons so far this year. How's your counterpart down in Dallas doing with the moves that the Cowboys have made or haven't made?
Yeah, so I do a weekly podcast with my enemy/friend, RJ Ochoa, called the NFC's Mixtape, and we talk about all things in the best division, maybe the worst division, one of the divisions in the NFL, and he's not doing so good. He is very much frustrated, basically, with everything since the playoff game till now. I would say he's happy that the Cowboys ended up keeping DeMarcus Lawrence, but pretty bummed out that they had to give up Amari Cooper on the cheap. Pretty bummed out that they weren't able to seal the deal with Randy Gregory and instead see him go to the Broncos. I think across the board, it's hard to look at the Cowboys and say they're better than they were, at the end of the year. So I think they've only kind of gotten worse. I think at best they've stayed the same, and I don't really think that's the case. And I think for a team that relied so much on, Trayvon Diggs having this incredible season last year and Micah Parsons coming out of nowhere. And don't get me wrong, those are still talented players, but for them to have the amount of turnovers and sacks and all these impact plays that they did last season, I don't think that's going to be sustainable. Not to mention that throughout all of this, there's speculation that Mike McCarthy is just going to get replaced anyway, and that he's almost like a lame duck, and Sean Payton's going to come in. So the Cowboys, I think, are not in the best spot right now.
All right, Brandon, last one from me, and make sure you read BLG, one of my favorites, bleedinggreennation.com. How many podcasts you got now, by the way? How many co-hosts of the SB Nation NFL show? You got the podcast with Jimmy. You just mentioned your podcast with RJ. How many podcasts you got going now?
That's at least 3 a week, sometimes more. So that's a lot.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on this show as well with Jody Mack and John McMullen. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm going to pull a Jody on you here, PLG.
Hypothetical?
Not a hypothetical.
Oh,
more of a percentage.
Yeah, I love a percentage.
I want a percentage because we have people going in all different directions. So I want a percentage to Howie Roseman's shocking the world like Jesse Ventura when he won the governorship of Minnesota. Shocking the world. Deshaun Watson's a Philadelphia Eagle. Percentage.
I'm going to say 18%.
18%. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
I feel better.
John's at 0. I'm at like
I'm in.
0.2. We're significantly lower than you, and way the hell lower than Santa Liquido. All right, here's my last question, BLG. Yesterday, Jonathan Gannon was down at Georgia for their pro day, and we know they've got at least 4, if not 5 guys who can go in the first round defensively. We know where the Eagles picks are up now. Will they be moving around? Will they be changing them? I'm going to, since McMullen borrowed one of my usual questions, I'm going to borrow one of his. Eagles have 3 picks in the first round. Will they have nerve enough, stick-to-itiveness enough to use all 3 on defensive players? And is at least 1, if not 2, coming out of the University of Georgia?
Be a pretty good bet that they're going to take at least 1 Georgia player in this draft. I don't think they're going to make all 3 picks. And if they do, let's assume they do. We're operating within the framework where they do make all 3 picks. Even then, I still have my doubts that they're definitely all going to be defenders when you look at this team's history of evaluating and their valuation of offense and everything. But, I mean, you look at Devontae Wyatt, who the Eagles are reportedly hosting on a pre-draft visit. It's their first known one that we know about so far. Their top 30 visits. That's obviously worth keeping an eye on. Jordan Davis just blew up the combine, and not only his athleticism, but his size is insane. You're going to have to think hard about him, especially, again, if you are moving on from Fletcher Cox. Obviously, Nakobe Dean, I'll believe when they take a first-round linebacker when I see it. So a lot of options there. Jonathan Gannon, as you mentioned, at their pro day, again, significant, not shocking, but, significant to see him there. So I definitely think, good bet. If you want to place a bet, pretty decent chance that they take at least 1 Georgia defender.
Yeah, it's a pretty good bet for any team in the NFL, I think. Pretty good. It's pretty solid bet. Andy Water was there as well. Kevin Patullo at Georgia Pro Day. Everybody at Georgia Pro Day.
Who's the offensive player they want from Georgia?
Yeah, that's why they sent Kevin Patullo.
Ouch.
Yep. BLG, have a green beer for me at some point. You got the green shirt on. You got to have a green beer, too. Thanks for getting up with us.
Thanks, guys.
That is Brandon Lee Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation. I did not see the Patullo was down in Georgia. They got in.
No, they love that. They love Kevin Patullo. That wasn't a shot. But, yeah, I mean, they're not. They're taking the.
Oh, I was taking it as a legit guy going down. I don't know that Georgia. Who would they be looking at as Georgia's Pickens?
I'm sure they have some athletes, but yeah, nobody high profile. But you're remember, it's more. Yeah, it's not just the first round, second round. They could be looking at somebody in the deeper in the draft. Who knows? But no surprise they had 3 high profile people at Georgia's pro day.
All right. Speaking of high profile, you threw it out there yesterday to the tail end of the show. I want to get you on a follow-up on it about the Eagles wanting to change the rules in the National Football League about not letting upper management, scouting, and the like player personnel go till after the draft, that they can be picked off and hired and leaves the team somewhat in a lurch. This is a pretty strong stance the Eagles are taking and would be a significant change in the National Football League. I want to ask you about that a little further. Coming back, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac here on Birds 365.